There is a specific kind of exhaustion that only the awakened know. It is not a physical tiredness, but a deep, resonant fatigue in the marrow of your soul. You have read the books, you have practiced the meditations, you have decoded the systems, unlearned the lies, and stared into the abyss until your eyes burn. And yet, here you are, still trapped in the same loops, still fighting the same reactions, still waiting for that final explosive moment of liberation that was promised to you, but never seems to arrive. Consider this terrifying possibility. What if the very effort you are exerting to wake up is the exact force keeping you asleep? What if your spiritual discipline has mutated into a metaphysical cage? This is not a failure of your will. It is a fundamental law of physics. We are dealing with a mechanism so subtle, so counterintuitive, that the ancient Hermeticists hid it in riddles and modern physicists hide it in equations. It is the trap of the observer. Before we unlock the first seal, I must ask you to make a choice. If you are one of the rare few who are brave enough to admit that trying has only brought you more suffering, if you are ready to stop looking at the truth and start becoming it, please click subscribe. Join us in the void. Let us dismantle the illusion of effort together. The paradox we are facing today is simple yet devastating. In the quantum world and in the spiritual realm, the act of observation is not passive. It is an act of creation, or more accurately, it is an act of limitation. By constantly monitoring your vibration, by judging your thoughts, by checking to see if you are enlightened yet, you are inadvertently freezing your reality into a solid, immovable block. You are trying to use the mind to escape the mind, and the mind is winning. To understand why your spiritual progress has stalled, we must look at the most famous puzzle in quantum mechanics, the Double-Slit Experiment. But we are not going to look at it as a dry scientific test. We are going to look at it as a map of your soul. Imagine a stream of particles, tiny units of matter, being fired at a barrier with two slits. Behind this barrier is a back wall that records where these particles land. When scientists fire these particles and simply let them be, something miraculous happens. The particles do not behave like solid little balls. They behave like waves. They pass through both slits simultaneously, interfering with themselves, creating a pattern of infinite potential on the back wall. This wave function represents pure possibility. It is the state of the universe before it decides what to be. It is the state of your soul when it is free, fluid, and connected to the source. Now, imagine the scientists decide to get clever. They install a sensor, a camera, an observer, to watch exactly which slit the particle goes through. They want to know, they want to measure. The moment that eye is opened, the moment the observation begins, the wave function collapses. The particle stops behaving like a magical wave of potential and snaps into a single, solid, limited point of matter. It chooses one path. The magic dies. The infinite becomes the finite. This is exactly what you are doing to yourself, 14 times a second. You are the scientist, and your soul is the particle. Every time you hyper-analyze your behavior, asking, "Am I vibrating high enough?" Or "Was that a shadow self reaction?" you are acting as the observer. You are collapsing the wave function of your own spirit. You are forcing your fluid, infinite nature to snap into a rigid definition of me trying to be spiritual. You are killing the magic by watching it too closely. Itzhak Bentov, the engineer mystic who saw the universe as a hologram of consciousness, understood this trap better than anyone. In his seminal work, Stalking the Wild Pendulum, he gave us a model of reality that explains why this constant observation is so dangerous. Bentov described consciousness not as a steady stream, but as a rapid oscillation, a pendulum swinging back and forth at incredible speeds. Picture a pendulum. When is it moving the fastest? When it is swinging through the bottom of the arc, right in the middle. In this state, it is full of kinetic energy, full of action. This corresponds to our physical reality, the solid world of matter and time, where we rush around, do things, pay bills, and think thoughts. But consider the pendulum at the very top of its swing. For a split second before it falls back down, it comes to a complete halt. It enters a state of zero velocity. Bentov called this the rest point. He theorized that in this tiny fraction of a second, when the pendulum stops, our consciousness expands infinitely. It slips out of the dimension of time and space and connects with the absolute void, the universal hologram where all knowledge and all potential exist. This blink happens billions of times a second. We are constantly blinking in and out of existence, dipping into the infinite and returning to the finite. Here is the secret that the schools of mystery have guarded. Evolution does not happen in the movement. It happens in the pause. It happens in that silence at the top of the swing. But here is the tragedy of the modern seeker. By constantly watching yourself, by maintaining a hyper-vigilant state of spiritual analysis, you are pushing the pendulum. You are refusing to let it rest. You are keeping your consciousness locked in the action phase, terrified that if you let go, you will lose progress. You are like a man running on a treadmill, screaming that he wants to reach the horizon. The faster you run, the more books you read, the more techniques you force, the more you reinforce the physical reality you are trying to escape. You are solidifying the bars of the cage with your own attention. To access the quantum leap, the pendulum must be allowed to stop. The observer must close its eyes. The wave must be allowed to be a wave, unseen and unmeasured. Now, we must turn the light inward and confront the entity that is running this experiment. You believe that you are the one observing your thoughts. You believe that there is a higher self watching a lower self, guiding it toward the light. But I invite you to look closer at this observer. Who is it really? When a voice in your head says, "That was a low vibration thought," or "You are not being present enough," that voice is not God. That voice is the spiritual ego. This is the most dangerous trick the Matrix has ever pulled. It has sold you a version of spirituality that is nothing more than a surveillance state. You have built a panopticon inside your own mind. In a prison panopticon, the inmates behave because they know they are being watched by a guard in the central tower. In your mind, you are both the inmate and the guard. You spend your days policing your own consciousness, terrified that one slip-up, one moment of anger, one negative emotion will ruin your ascension timeline. This constant self-monitoring creates a state of chronic metaphysical tension. You are never at rest. You are never in the 0 point that Bentov described, because the guard never sleeps. This is why you feel exhausted. You are holding the weight of the entire universe on your shoulders, believing that if you stop watching, everything will fall apart. But the truth is darker. The guard does not want you to wake up. The guard wants to keep his job. As long as you are trying to fix yourself, the ego has a purpose. So, how do we escape a trap that is built out of our own attention? How do we stop collapsing the wave function? The answer lies in a paradox that the Taoists called wu-wei, or effortless action, but which we will call the art of looking away. To see the true nature of reality, you must learn to stop looking directly at it. You must master the use of your metaphysical peripheral vision. Think about the structure of the human eye. The center of your retina, the fovea, is designed for sharp focus and detail. It is what you use to read, to analyze, to hunt. This is the predator vision. But the edges of your retina, the periphery, are designed to detect motion and low light. They are more sensitive to the subtle, the hidden, the unexpected. Astronomers know this well. If you want to see a very dim star, you cannot look directly at it. If you stare directly, it disappears. You must look slightly to the side, and suddenly the star pops into view. Your spiritual reality works exactly the same way. When you stare directly at your enlightenment, demanding to know where it is, measuring how close you are, it vanishes. The wave function collapses into the particle of lack. You see only the absence of what you want. But when you look away, when you engage in what the mystics call divine distraction, the magic returns. This is why your most profound breakthroughs never happen when you are meditating perfectly on your cushion, trying hard to be holy. They happen when you are washing the dishes. They happen when you are walking the dog, or staring blankly at the rain, or laughing at a joke. In those moments, the guard is distracted. The predator vision is turned off. Your focus is soft, peripheral. And in that unguarded split second, the pendulum hits the rest point. The wave function expands. The signal from the source slips through the cracks of your attention. To master this art is to become comfortable with the unknown. It means trusting the background processes of your soul. You do not need to check your digestion to ensure your body is processing food. You do not need to check your heart to ensure it is beating. So why do you feel the need to check your spirit to ensure it is evolving? It knows what to do. Your interference is the only thing slowing it down. The practice, then, is not to focus harder, but to soften your gaze. Stop staring at the problem. Stop staring at the solution. Stop staring at yourself. Let your awareness drift to the edges. Let the world blur. It is in the blur that the sharpest truths are found. It is in the neglect of the ego that the soul finally finds room to breathe.
How, then,
do we practice this art of looking away in a world that demands our constant attention? How do we retrain a mind that is addicted to the hard, sharp focus of survival? The answer lies in a technique we will call metaphysical soft focus. To understand this, I want you to recall or imagine those magic eye 3D posters that were popular decades ago. When you look at them with your normal, focused vision, all you see is a chaotic mess of colors and patterns. You can analyze the ink, measure the shapes, and try to force the hidden image to appear, but you will fail. The more you focus, the flatter the image becomes. The secret to unlocking the hidden dimension is to relax your eyes. You have to look through the image, not at it. You have to allow your vision to blur, to give up the need for sharp edges. And in that moment of surrender, the 3D image suddenly pops out of the chaos. Your life is a magic eye poster. Your problems, your trauma, your spiritual goals, these are the chaotic patterns on the surface. You have been staring at them until your eyes water, trying to force them to make sense. Now, let us try the soft focus. The practice is deceptively simple. It begins with your physical eyes. Several times a day, stop what you are doing. Do not close your eyes. Instead, pick a point in the distance, but do not focus on it. Expand your awareness to your peripheral vision. Become aware of the ceiling, the floor, the walls on either side of you, all at once, without moving your eyes. You are now in panoramic vision. Physiologically, this signals your nervous system to switch from the sympathetic fight or flight mode to the parasympathetic rest and digest. Now, apply this same panoramic softness to your mind. When a negative thought arises, perhaps a wave of anxiety or a shadow of judgment, do not zoom in on it. Do not analyze where it came from. Do not pull out your journal to decode it. Do not try to heal it. Simply let it be a blur in the periphery of your consciousness. Acknowledge its presence, but keep your gaze fixed on the nothingness behind it. By doing this, you refuse to collapse the wave function of that emotion. You do not solidify it into a problem. You leave it as a wave. And waves, by their very nature, flow. They rise, they crest, and they dissolve. It is only when you grab them with your focused attention that they freeze into ice. Restoring the wave function means allowing your internal world to be fluid again. It means trusting that you can navigate the storm without staring at every single raindrop. We arrive now at the edge of the cliff. We have spoken of the trap, the science, and the practice. But there is one final, terrifying realization that stands between you and true liberation. It is the realization that Itzhak Bentov hinted at, but which few dare to fully embrace. If the act of observation creates reality, and if you are the one observing, then who are you? The ultimate paradox of the spiritual path is that the seeker, the one who bought the books, who watched this video, who wants to be enlightened, is the only thing standing in the way of enlightenment. The seeker is a construct of the mind. It is a mask worn by the ego to feel important. The seeker needs the search to continue, because if the search ends, the seeker dies. This is why you feel stuck. The part of you that is trying to wake up is the part of you that cannot wake up. A dream character cannot wake up from the dream. The dreamer must wake up from the character. The final collapse is not the collapse of the wave function into matter. It is the collapse of the observer into the observed. It is the moment you realize there is no one watching the pendulum. There is no one standing outside the universe looking in. You are not the dancer. You are the dance. You are not the listener. You are the sound. When you finally stop watching yourself, when you finally give up the exhausting project of improving your soul, a strange silence follows. The scaffolding of your spiritual identity falls away. There is no longer a good you and a bad you. There is no longer a distance between where you are and where you need to be. The gap closes. The pendulum stops. In that stillness, you do not find God. You realize you were never lost. You disappear into the canvas of reality, no longer a separate ink spot trying to be beautiful, but the ink itself, the hand that holds the pen and the space in which it is written. So, my friend, stop watching, stop waiting, stop trying. The cage door is open. The only thing keeping you inside is your refusal to look away from the bars. Walk out. The void is warm, and you have been home all along.